Relative pronouns and relative clauses. Relative clauses start with relative pronouns. The relative pronouns are who, which, that. Who, whom, which, that, whose, and whose. Here are repeated because of the usage. Let's start with when do we use or why do we use relative clauses? We use relative clauses in English to add information to the about the subject or the object of the sentence. We have two types, defining and non-defining. The defining, which is important information, it's important, essential to the sentence itself, so you have to add it, and we don't put any types of commas between the clause. While non-defining, it is unnecessary information, you can delete it. You don't have to write it, but sometimes we just write it to give general information about someone, about his age, about his job. Here we have to use commas between the clause itself. You have to put a comma at the beginning of the clause and a comma at the end of the clause. Look at this example here. Lord Thompson, who is 76, has just retired. Look here between who is 76. This is the relative clause. Who is 76, comma, and before who there's a comma. As you can see here, this is non-defining. This is what? Non-defining to the sentence. Look at the second one. This is the house which Jack built. Here, this information is essential for the sentence to complete the meaning. This is the house. It is incomplete sentence, so here which Jack built is necessary to the sentence to complete the meaning. So these are the two types of relative clauses. Now let's start with who. When do we use who? We use who if we are talking about the subject of the sentence, and the subject is a human, is a person. Look here. Mary is the woman discovered radium. Radium here is an element. So we used here who because who here refers to the subject, Mary. Okay, next one. Let me find another sentence with who. Lord Thompson, who is 76, has just retired. Here who, again, because we are referring to the subject, which is a person, we used who. Good. Now, when do we use whose and whom? Let's start with whose. Whose, we use it only for possessive form. If we are talking about his brother, his mother, something that belongs to him, we use whose. Example, this is George, whose brother went to the school. Here in the sentence, we are not talking about George, we are talking about his brother. This is why we used whose brother went to school with me. Now, whom. When do we use whom? We use whom if we are talking about the object of the sentence. Look here. This is George, whom you met at our house last year. George here, if you look at the sentence, it's an object. It's an object. It's the object of the sentence. This subject is the verb, George, the object. So here, whom refers to George, which is the object of the sentence. Another one. This is George's brother. Forget about with whom because you're not taking any types of prepositions. Okay, move ahead into which and who. We said about who, we use who for the subject. If the subject is a person, we use who. Now, for which, we use which if we are talking about the subject or the object, and the subject and the object is non-human. It's an animal or an object like a chainsaw, house, book, store, anything else. We use which. Example, we bought a chainsaw. Here, chainsaw, it's not a human, of course. Chainsaw is an object. Chainsaw, which we cut. Forget about with, which we cut. Okay, next one. Now, here, we bought a chainsaw which we cut all the wood up with. Now, when and where. When here, We use it if we are talking about time, and where if we are talking about a place. As you can see, when for a time and where for a place. England won the World Cup in 1966 when we got married. Look, it was the year when. Here they used when because we are talking about time. We are talking about time. Next one. I remember my 20th birthday. It was the day when, again, here we are talking about time. It was the day. Okay, good. Now let's talk about when, where. Do you remember the place where we caught the train? Where here refers to a place. So this is why we use where here. Let's say Amman is the city. Let's change it. Amman is the city where we met. Where refers to Amman or to the city. It's a location, it's a place. Good. Let's try to solve these questions. Here, combine the sentences using defining relative clauses. So here, because it's mentioning the defining, so we don't have to put any types of commas. So that's the girl who. Here you have to write who because we are talking about. Actually, we don't have to use who, whom. We have to use whom because here girl is the object, and we have to delete the pronoun because here the subject now is the relative pronoun. I rent a house. Here, because house is an object, we have to use which. Which. Remove the pronoun because I told you again the subject here became the relative pronoun. That's the building. Again, that's the building. Here we are talking about a place where I work. Where I working. Where I working. That's the boy. Now here we are talking about possessive. Look, his mother. So remove his, the possessive pronoun, and change it with whose. Whose mother works in the post office. The businessman was very rich. I saw him last night. Here we're talking about time because last night when I saw him. Thank you guys. Inshallah, next video will be about reported speech and try to answer the rest of the questions. Thank you.